What if your school looked like this? After midnight? And would you dare pick it up, knowing it wasn't there a second ago?
Welcome to my channel. Today's stories are from Reddit. The first one is from The Night Watchman. It was a Friday afternoon, and I had just gotten off work. I started my rounds as the Night Watchman, which consisted of walking around the outside of the building, checking all the doors and windows were locked, checking the loading dock, the dumpster area, and the parking lot. It was boring most of the time. The building I worked at was a large manufacturing facility that produced plastic bottles and other items. Most of the employees had driven home hours ago, since production stopped at 4 p.m., and most of the cleanup crew had also left. That meant I had very little to do. I usually brought a book and would sit in the front lobby reading until my shift ended at midnight. On this particular night, I was walking around the backside of the building doing my rounds, when I heard a noise inside the building. It sounded like someone running around on the second floor directly above me. There was no one who was supposed to be in the building at this hour. I continued my route, figuring it was probably just some raccoons or something. I finished my rounds, clocked out, and headed home. The next morning I was reading the incident report from the night before. The maintenance supervisor clocked out right after me, and as I scanned the report, I noticed he had written down about hearing noises inside the building. Apparently he checked everything and found nothing. He mentioned hearing what sounded like footsteps and then a loud crash. We were both on edge after this and decided to team up for our next shift, which started at 9 p.m. We did the same routine of walking the grounds, making sure everything was secure. This time we decided to split up and check the interior of the building. We agreed to meet back at the front door at 10:30 p.m. I headed up to the second floor where I heard the commotion the night before. I checked each room. They were all empty. As I rounded the corner into the hallway, I saw a mop bucket in the middle of the floor. I knew there was no janitorial staff working this late. I stepped over the bucket and continued down the hallway. As I came to the end of the hall, I saw the most terrifying sight. In front of me was an open doorway. I knew every door on that floor was supposed to be locked. I slowly approached the door and peered inside. The room was pitch black. I couldn't make out anything in the darkness. Slowly, I began to walk inside. At this point, my flashlight was dead, and the only light source was coming from the emergency lights in the ceiling. I called out, "Hello, is anyone there?" No response. I continued to walk further into the room, and I felt something brush against my leg. I screamed and ran back to the hallway. My heart was pounding in my chest. When my partner heard me screaming, he came running down the hall. I pointed to the room with the open door and told him to come see what I found. We both stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. Then he said, "Let's get out of here." We left the building and called the police. The cops searched the building and didn't find anyone. They checked the surveillance footage and there was nothing on the cameras. To this day, we don't know what was in that room. I love those creepy stories. If you like more like them, stay tuned for the rest of the week, because we'll be doing a whole week of creepy pasta stories. Now it's time for a break. But before you go, let me ask you a favor. Please hit the like button, because it really helps support the channel. Also, if you're new here, please subscribe. I have plenty more videos like these to keep you scared. Welcome to my channel. This is the most haunted place I've ever traveled. I was going through some old video clips, and I came across this one from a high school athlete. It was late at night, and he was the last one in the locker room. It was after practice, and he had just finished up and was grabbing his bag to leave. As he did, the lights flickered and then buzzed back on, and that's when he noticed the shadow between the lockers. And it was tall, but completely still. He got out, thinking maybe it was a teammate, but there was no answer. Then the light flickered again, and the shadow was gone, and he was like, "What the heck?" And then, a locker slammed shut right beside him. That S, when he ran out of the locker room barefoot and didn't even bother to grab his stuff, leaving it all behind. And he said he would never go back in there. The next morning, though, he did go back in there to grab his stuff, because he needed it for tryouts that were happening later that day. And when he went back into the locker room, it was perfectly normal. The doors were shut, but they were all open easily, and he noticed that the locker that slammed shut the night before wasn't his. In fact, that locker hadn't been used in years. Nobody even knew why it was still there. Now, here's where things get really strange. See, this story was originally posted on Reddit, and one of the top comments was from somebody who claimed to be the original posteress, former coach. And he said that there were two sets of lockers. One was for the home side of the gym, and the other was for the visiting team. And the visiting team locker room had UNT been used in years, because they renovated the gym and put in new, nicer lockers. And the visiting team no longer had to come into the school. They could just stay on their bus and then walk right on to the field. And so this coach said, yeah, there's no way anyone would be in there. And if someone was in there, there's only one way they could have gotten in there, which was through a window that was up really high. And it was almost impossible to get in through that window. You basically had to be an Olympic pole vaulter to make it through that window. But then one of the other coaches commented, and he said that he remembered one time when they were getting stuff out of the old visiting team locker room. And that's when they made a very gruesome discovery. They found the skeleton of a young man in one of those lockers. And it appeared to be an old suicide, so we don't know what happened in this locker room. Maybe it's just an evil place, or maybe it's just an old haunted school. But either way, there's something weird going on there. And that reminds me of another story that I experienced firsthand. I was filming a video in an old school and it was about to get demolished. Now, I love urban exploration, and I love finding secret things in these old buildings. And that's when I found a secret passageway hidden behind a bookshelf in the library. And it was one of those pop-out book sets. I pulled the books out and I stepped through, and it led to a secret room. And then I noticed something in the corner of the room. It was a skeleton wearing a 1930s style suit. So this building definitely had a very dark past. Now, you should watch this video about a haunted house that I explored, or check out this video about a demonic painting that's not real. Hey, wanna hear a scary story, okay? Here's one. It was finals week, and Alex was cramming for an exam in an empty classroom. All the other students had gone home for the holidays, so he had the entire campus to himself. The only sound was the ticking of the old wall clock in the hall. It was around 1 a.m., and Alex was studying with the door open, just a little bit, when he noticed a dark figure standing outside the window. When he blinked, it was gone. Alex shook it off, assuming that it was just a trick of the light. But then the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Alex sat frozen in his seat, listening intently. Then he heard it again, the sound of someone breathing, but it was right behind him. Panic surged through him. He grabbed his bag and ran for the exit, not stopping until he was off campus. When he calmed down and returned the next day, he found a strange chain and padlock on the classroom door. Confused, he asked the security guard what was going on. The guard checked his records and told him that the room hadn't been used in years. Alex couldn't believe it. He knew the school budget had been cut, but he didn't realize that they'd gone that far. Still, he was relieved to have the place to himself. He could finally study without the distractions of his classmates. Plus, it gave him a chance to show off his new EDC. Sure, it was a bit overkill, but better safe than sorry. He walked in and sat at his desk, opening his bag. Inside was a sleek, black laptop, a thick stack of textbooks, a fidget spinner, a Swiss Army knife, pepper spray, and a taser. Alex smiled, feeling more prepared than ever. But then he heard a noise. It was coming from the closet. Alex froze, his heart pounding in his chest. What was that? He tried to rationalize it away, telling himself that it was probably just a branch or an animal. But his gut was telling him to get out of there. As the minutes ticked by, the scratching continued. Alex debated whether he should investigate, but he decided against it. Instead, he packed up his things and headed for the door. And that's when he saw it. A dark, slimy hand was reaching out from the closet, its fingers long and sharp like claws. Alex screamed and stumbled back, knocking over his chair. The hand retracted, and for a moment, Alex thought he'd imagined it. But then he heard a voice. "Hello," it rasped. "Who's there?" Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He wanted to run, but his legs felt like they were filled with lead. I'm not sure what I did," Alex stammered. "But if you want whatever it is, you can have it." The voice chuckled, and Alex could have sworn it was right behind him. He whirled around, but there was nothing there. Then he heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming closer. Alex turned tail and ran, his bag slung over his shoulder, the books inside thumping against his back. He could hear the creature moving quickly behind him, its footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. As he ran, Alex fumbled for the door handle, but it was locked. He pounded on it with his fists, but it wouldn't budge. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his leg. He looked down and saw a long, gnarled finger digging into his flesh. Adrenaline surged through him, and Alex kicked out, connecting with something solid. He didn't stop to see what he'd hit, but kept running until he reached his dorm room. He threw open the door and collapsed on his bed, his heart pounding in his chest. Trembling, he pulled out his phone and scrolled through social media, trying to calm down. When he looked up, he saw a notification from his Ring doorbell camera. It had detected a delivery and sent him a photo. Alex frowned, confused. He hadn't ordered anything. He clicked on the photos, and his blood ran cold. It was of the hand again, the same one that had grabbed his leg, except now it was holding a package. Alex's mind raced. What was in the package? How did the creature know where he lived? And why was it following him? He cautiously approached the door and peeked through the peephole. On the other side was a small package wrapped in brown paper. Alex hesitated, his heart pounding in his chest. What if it was a bomb? What if it was a trap? But curiosity got the better of him, and he reached out to grab the package. As soon as he did, he heard a loud crash from inside his apartment. His phone flew out of his hand and shattered on the floor. Alex spun around to see the creature standing in his living room, its eyes fixed on him. It took a step forward and Alex instinctively backed away. This is it, he thought. This is how I die. These are the most terrifying back-to-school stories from around the world. Back-to-school nights are supposed to be all about studying and friends. But for these people, they turned into nights of fear, confusion, and memories they'll never forget. In Japan, one student was so scared of being alone in their school at night that they brought a knife to class. They ended up stabbing their teacher and then took their own life. In South Korea, a group of students were doing an overnight study session in their school. That's when they heard a knock. Thinking it was their friend, they opened the door and it was a complete stranger. He had a knife, and he asked them if they wanted to see a magic trick. Before they could respond, he attacked them, and they barely escaped with their lives. In the US, a student was so stressed about their exams that they decided to stay in their school overnight. They fell asleep at their desk and woke up to someone screaming in their ear. When they turned around, they saw a bloody meat cleaver. The school had hired a new janitor that night, and he had a really bloody accident. Would you ever stay alone in a school at night?